Okay, so the initial verse, the unfailing faith and great vows will receive a wage of the value of nirvana. And here, obviously, in a parable, and the master has been describing about the wage that they were happy with and were small wages. But so this is to really be awakened to realize the value of the wage of nirvana. So we face physical hardship and torment without anger and do not consider it suffering. And obviously, at the times, I'm sure you, if I reflect back during the time, our parents' generation, of course, they went through a lot of hardship purely for the well-being of our generation. And to them, obviously, we look at what they've been through. They've been through a lot of hardship, but they did so obviously without anger and do not consider suffering, because that's considered as love. So with determination, we put the teachings into action without the doubles. Then it's without doubles, meaning without any doubt that one would have either this way or that way. So this mind is pure and skilled. So from the Four Noble Truths, we ended on Karma teachings. And obviously this was the second period of teaching, and then come through the third period, Five Puya teachings, where we gradually goes to the small to the greater vehicle. So in Master's explanation, it says that the Buddha taught to awaken our hearts and to open the minds wide. And it resonates very well with me, and because the root, or rather the door to enlightenment, is through our mind, but then we first need to awaken our hearts. So the more expansive our minds are, the more extensive a state we can experience, because because when we expand our mind, we open our mind, we do not confine our mind from learning and growing from the teachings. If we can do this, we will then be able to eliminate our afflictions layer by layer. But what is this afflictions that when we open our mind? Is this, I'm sure often when you engage into a conversation with someone, and the whole conversation or debate will be about exchanges of each other's views. And in the process of the discussion, we'll obviously hold on to our views, and so will be the other person in which you converse with. And mindfully, this is, then we realize that, well, I unknowingly been holding on to my views. And this happens all the time without us knowing. And this is the infinitesimally small changes in our mental formation that do so without our realization. At a time, our state of mind will be so tranquil as we had entered nirvana. Obviously, this is a state that when it attain the enlightenment, our worldly afflictions, ignorance, and thus like delusion are then eliminated to a state of purity. So in the spiritual practice, we must face physical hardship and torment without anger. And, you know, times that when things are more developed during our parents' generation, they went through hardship. And to them, they never went through so-called suffering to them, because they did it for the love of the family. But then in our generation and sure, children's generation, if they were to face the same hardship, there would be lots of complaints. So you can then understand this infinitely small changes in our mental formation. Our spiritual cultivation starts from the Four Noble Truths as we enter the Karma teachings. So that's when the Puya Sutras slowly go from the small to the greater vehicle for 8 years. So this fundamental teaching then is to give unconditionally And then eventually from the Vaipuja to the Passion Sutra, talk about emptiness. And the important thing to note is that we must, when we give it our expectation, we do so and knowing that because we need to have the, one is to limit our affliction, holding on to our whatever attachments that we have. So we need to detach. And secondly, to realize that because life is impermanent, we must act with urgency, as Master say. And there's no time to waste because this lifetime is short. So we should make good use of our time and seize the moment to live the wisdom life. So in the lessons learned on the three sufferings, I would not cover this because Brother Alex has covered so much detail. So we just go on to now to have experienced many suffering and sufferings by fiery afflictions. So facing suffering and fire afflictions. Fire afflictions is not just our own, but when we go amongst others. So therefore, we need to realize that that's why earlier on that we go to this hardship and difficulties. We shouldn't get afflicted on us. So in so doing now, in a contemplation, in contemplation now on that, because we had a bit of time, I thought I'll give you a longer one today. So contemplation, seek to understand the suffering of others, as well as the state of minds. And when you understand, and this is also one that when we do that, we also grow in learning skillful means. Much that you can help to alleviate the pain and suffering, the door to liberation is through the mind. But honestly, when one is suffering, they just want to alleviate the pain, and that it's obviously where the pain is coming from is afflicting very much on the body as a whole. But at the end of the day, obviously, what we need to do to have a state of liberation is through the mind. So for us, being cultivation, and one of the merits in our cultivation is that you have a good life to cultivate. So observe quietly and learn, growing further in inner knowing. And this inner knowing can only come about when we have developed and opened up our inner faculties. And this can only be grown when our spiritual consciousness have grown. So more questions in your heart will arise, and they will open, and new meanings will unfold, growing further into higher learning. And that is why in our journey of growing in a practice, the same teaching we just learned 1 year ago will unfold different meanings now. The same practice you have done a year ago, or 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, will give you, the same practice will give you a different realization. And that's why my growth in our spiritual practice. So, but some suffer much by holding on to the pain. But if they can just open the hearts to forgive, they'll have to let go of the pain. And this is about the part about in the Master's initial words about not feeling the suffering. It's because of, even though they go through hardship, it's because we hold on, we are attached to that mental affliction. So we got to learn to forgive and let go. And we can then let go of the pain that is hurting us within. So when one is merciful, then one is filled with love within. And to be merciful, you need to be first to be forgiving. So on relationships, there are choices in relationship. And all the relationships come to us. They do come to us for a reason. So everyone has choices to make in our life. Many choose to enjoy their lives whenever pleasure is available. And that's the way it is. It's natural for all of us to do that. And why do we work? We work to get money, then we get a good life, we enjoy life. So regard this life as a life sentence of self-correction that you need to serve. But those who are in practice will realize that the life is not the life of pleasure. It's to understand the pleasure of life. And the pleasure of the life that we have is precious. And here, the purpose of this life That's why it's a life sentence to correct ourselves. And so we do so into the search path is by serving. So you all have the freedom to change. We all do. There is no forced institution. The choice is entirely for us to make. So you choose the path to change, the teacher and the teachings, but you must put in the self-effort. Why? So because this change can only be done by yourself. So unlike the lower realms, there may be no torture in the sentence because we are not hell beings or hungry ghosts. So we don't have that torture, but the penance will come later if we are not careful. So some must live through life of pain and suffering in repaying the karma. For one who can have much freedom to choose, therefore we should wisely change. Okay, Ghana brothers and sisters, thank you.
Yeah, deepest kangen to our brother Chin for this wonderful insight, our brother sharing. Yes, the antidote to all this suffering is to serve others without expectation and walk the path. Yep. Thank you so much, brother. Okay, we